To live up your 20s or work up your 20s? That is the question. Is it more beneficial to you to just spend your whole 20s living a good life, partying, living your best life, and then focusing on working harder in your 30s? Or is it more beneficial to you to spend all the time working hard in your 20s so that you can reap the rewards later in your life? That is a question that I think plagues us all, that kind of we all think about in some capacity, whether it is about specifically working up or living up your 20s, or if it's just like a certain period in your life, like a 5-year period, or like if it's a longer period in your life. This is a concept that was kind of put into words by Chris Williamson, Modern Wisdom. If you don't know already, I watch a lot of him, and I get a lot of my topics from some of the stuff he talks about, because he talks about good stuff sometimes. So I'm going to give my take on this idea, what I think of it. It's just the whole point. It's like, would you rather live it up, right? Live your best life, go for the good stuff, or work it up, make the sacrifice so that you can have the chance to live it up in the future? So I'm going to give my thoughts on it. I'm going to give my take on it in this episode. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's good stuff. Obviously, in every episode, I try my best to make it as good as possible. So I hope you enjoy it. Show your support in any way that you can if you do. But let's get right into the episode. I make a podcast episode every single day for 365 days. You will be hated for speaking the truth.
You definitely have like an X-ray goggles on, where you can see someone's aura.
A house divided against itself shall not stand. Matthew chapter 12, verse 25.
If you want to make something of yourself, forget your political beliefs.
Because different believers experience God in different ways, different non-believers need different explanations to see God as real. Things that make you angry suck you in.
Satan's plan fails, right? And God's plan prevails.
So for the sake of this episode, it's going to be talked about specifically living up your 20s or working up your 20s. Like from when you're 20 till when you're 30, let's say. It can be different. Maybe you see it as like a 5-year period. Maybe the cutoff for you is 25. Maybe the cutoff for you is like 28, right? Maybe the cutoff for you is 35. Whatever that number is in your head, that like, oh, I'm okay with kind of dedicating a certain period of my life to one type of philosophy. We're going to go with, just for now, for the sake of this video, your 20s versus your 30s versus your 40s, right? Your different stages in your life, different periods in your life. The theory between the living up your 20s and working up your 20s is like, you live up your 20s, and if you live up your 20s too much, you actually then have to work even harder in your 30s. But if you work hard in your 20s, you can actually have a pretty easy life for your 30s and maybe even beyond that. That's the idea, at least between them. But there's sacrifices you have to make for either. It's not as clear-cut as saying, oh, obviously you should be responsible and work up your 20s. There's sacrifices for either one. And I'm going to go over a lot of them in this episode today. But my opinion on this is that you have to, and I believe that it is truly possible to find something in between. Like, again, it's usually the boring answer. Like, you, for the sake of retention, you'd want to kind of, and the sake of division, you'd want to pick one or the other. But I truly think the best way is to find a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Where you're working, you're making money, you're kind of hustling, you're trying to make it in this world, and you're also spending a lot of time enjoying yourself. You're spending a lot of time actually going out there, experiencing new things, traveling if traveling's your thing, doing things with friends, getting out there, right? I think there is truly a world where you can do both. I think there is a world where you can do both. Because I think my recent perspective in my life is like, I can continue to mess up and fail for 10 more years, and I'll still be super young and have so much time to make it back. That's my current philosophy. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to mess up and make mistakes for 10 more years. I am going to start moving forward very, very, very soon, right? Like, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. That's my current philosophy. That it's like, I feel like your 20s are when you are the youngest, you have the most energy, you're the most vibrant, you're the most out there, your brain's still developing and maturing, you're more open to change and more open to new things, new experiences, that maybe your mind starts to get closed off as you get older. As you kind of get older, you get more tired, like maybe muscular injuries and fatigue that you deal with. You're more susceptible to it the more older you get. So, like, I think it's like, if you don't use these years to actually live your life, like, it's a cliche, but you truly only live once, right? Like, if you don't use these years to live your life, living your life when you're older just kind of, I feel like it feels like you have a little bit less you can do. You want to be rich young, right? Like you don't want to be rich when you're in your 70s because you can't really do anything with that money, right? You can't actually enjoy yourself with that money because you're old, and like because you just have less energy in general. You have less desire to get out there and do these things, right? That's why, like, obviously from the Christian perspective, obviously we know that if you're rich young, usually it kind of hurts you in the long run because like you end up not really knowing what to do with the money, right? And you end up trying to find something to fill up the void, plug in the gap, and it never really works. That's why, like, kind of the idea is, okay, you work up your 20s, you're on the come up, you're on the grind, and you just slave yourself for decades, if not more, so that in your 30s and in your 40s, you can reap the rewards still being young enough to actually enjoy those fruits. And I think that's a good idea. But you have to think about what else you're sacrificing if you were to do that. You're probably sacrificing relationships, right? I'll just take the example of Chris Williamson. I'm not hating the guy. I'm not like he's the guy that came up with this idea, so it makes sense to take him as an example. I'm not hating the guy. I think we all live our own lives. We all go through things, but he wants to be a dad. He wants to have a relationship. He wants to have a family, but he's almost 40 years old, and he's never really had the opportunity to do that. I think in part because he spent too much time just working super hard, that he's never had the time to kind of take a step back and just like try and sort something else out. Try to be a little bit more lax in certain situations. I think that I could be wrong, but I think that's my theory. Is that's like now he's at the point where he wants this stuff, but he's kind of getting to the point where he's a little bit old, and even he recognizes that for him to have a family, he has to probably go and date someone that's like a decade younger than him. And how's that gonna fare when it comes to compatibility with each other? Because it's basically a completely different generation, right? Completely different philosophies. So for him, it's going to be difficult, right? And if you're the type of person that wants a family, you want kids, the best way to do it is not by kind of sitting, working in business and working whatever you're doing to work your butt off. You should work your butt off, but you should also go out there, right? Going out there and having that fun time is where you're going to meet people that could potentially be candidates for something that can be more like long term, right? So when you're kind of grinding away, and if you slave away and you work your whole 20s away, you end up missing a lot of like relationships. The thing that comes with, like, hey, if you want to have a family, you might have to sacrifice that because your work might take you away from the people you love, from your family, from your potential family, right? From your offspring. So that's something that you're most likely going to have to sacrifice if you focus solely towards the working away, right, in your 20s. Yes, you have the most energy, and you can put that energy towards working, but you're making that sacrifice. And I mean, if that's a sacrifice you're willing to make because you think you believe that, okay, once you get to your 30s, if you make it, you'll then be able to settle down, then, go ahead. But I also think another problem with the working it up is that there's no guarantee that it will actually work. Like, there's no guarantee that you will be in your 30s and or in your 40s and like you'll be good for life because you worked up your 20s. It's not guaranteed, right? Like, you might still have to continue to work for the rest of your life. That is the system that we live in. That is a huge possibility. That's probably more possible than not. That even if you work your ass off, you save, you'll be in your 30s, you'll be in your 40s, and you still won't have enough to go out there and truly live the life you really want to live inside. And again, maybe that money will actually translate and you'll be able to have the money when you're a senior citizen, when you retire. But really, what are you supposed to do with that money at that age, right? Like there's not a whole hell of a lot in comparison to when you're young, when you're energized, when you're full of energy, right? So it's also not a guarantee that it's that simple, right? Oh, you work up your 20s, so then you don't have to work up your 30s, right? It doesn't always happen that way, right? And I think banking on it, betting on it happening that way is definitely, you're putting all your eggs in one basket here. And I think if it doesn't work, it's going to be just worse for you. You end up getting to the point where you've lived your life, you've just worked your ass off, but you've never taken a moment to sit back and enjoy it. And then you look back and you're going to be like, I wish I enjoyed it a little bit more. That's my perspective. Again, just my opinion. That's what I think about it all. And like, again, you're kind of sacrificing a lot. Obviously, you're sacrificing the good times so that you can have the good times later, the delayed gratification of it. But sometimes, because that's how the world works, you won't even be able to have that fun that you want to have in your 30s. So I think it's just better to have it now. Get it out of the way, get it out of your system now in your earlier years, when you have more energy, when you're a little bit more irresponsible, and it's a little bit more respectable. Not respectable, but I'm sure there's a better word for it. Like, it's a little bit more tangible. Being young and going out there and doing these fun things, making some mistakes, like just having some pure fun, enjoying your life, right? And then eventually you get to the point where you end up, you're like you end up being like, okay, yes, now it's time to put this away and move forward. Because, for example, obviously I'm not a guy that likes to go partying, clubbing, obviously, but like, it's weird, right? If you're in the club and you're in your 30s, that's just weird, right? And there are people that are in their like 40s and still going out there to the club and partying, and it's like, buddy, like, at that point, that's where it starts to, you start to lose respect. You start to lose like it starts to feel like you're just irresponsible, right? It's there's nothing noble about it. There's nothing valiant about that, right? But being in the club in your 20s, it's like, yes, like, that's the time you have to live it up and enjoy your life, right? But then on the flip side, you can then end up living it up too much that you become one of those people that you're just still living it up. You can't ever let it go. And that actually will harm you in the negative ways, the wrong ways as well. You end up being that old guy in the club. Like, you just can't give up the feeling, right? You end up you end up drinking too much, right? And the alcohol gives you problems, right? Whatever it may be. Or you end up having, like, if you're very irresponsible about it, you end up having, like, deeper health issues because of the fact that you didn't take care of yourself. You ended up just going a little bit too far, a little bit too extreme on the living it up, the partying side, and that leads to many other issues. And then, of course, you end up being broke because you spent so much money on living it up, and now you're just trying to play catch up. And it's probably harder to play catch up in your 30s and 40s than in your 20s, right? Because in your 30s and 40s, you're older, you have less energy, you're more prone to fatigue. Whereas when you're young, you should use those years. So that's why when I look at this, I say, yeah, there should be a middle ground. There should be a middle ground between living it up and working it up. Working it up can also give you some issues. Living it up can give you much different issues, and I'd probably argue much worse issues than if you were to work it up. Like, if I had to pick one, I feel like working it up would probably be more beneficial. But I think there's a world where you don't have to pick one. You can have time where you live it up, you enjoy your time, you truly make the most of your young years, and truly, like, enjoy it, but also at the same time having a good balance where you are also working, you're also making money, you're also setting yourself up for a good future as well. I think there's a world where you can do that. I think it's absolutely possible, right? You can work in the morning, party in the evening, right? Again, I'm using partying as an example, but it doesn't have to be party, right? You can work for a few months, grind, save up some money, and then whatever's left over, you spend a weekend and you go travel with your friends. You spend a week and you go travel with your friends, March break or the summer, right? As summer's approaching, I personally am very excited for the summer, for me and for my friend group and for everyone around me, because I think we're going to do some very fun things this summer. Like, truly just live it up, right? And I think that's good, because I've had a lot of time in my life already where I've just been working, where I've worked it up and I've worked a little bit, and I think, I'm ready to start actually enjoying some of the fruits of my labor by the money that I've made, putting that into enjoying myself, rather than just like slaving the summer away by continuing to work, right? You balance it out. You have a period in your life where you work, a period in your life where you enjoy it, right? And that's kind of what I'm doing my best to do right now in this moment in my life. But basically the point I'm trying to make is you can do both. Even, again, like as I said, you can mess up for 10 years and still be okay. But you probably don't want to mess up for that long. Like, maybe it's more realistic to say, okay, let's just continue to live it up for just a few years, right? Your college years, university years, maybe a few years after that, if you have a good friend group that loves to do whatever that stuff is, you travel, enjoy it when you're young. But then maybe by 25, 26, maybe that's the years you start to say, okay, let's try and find someone to start a family with. Let's try and actually start to have more responsibilities, get a better job, a bigger career. And then as those responsibilities pile up, you'll kind of move away just naturally from the desire to live it up and kind of be focused more towards the responsibility that you need to have as an adult, right? And I think that'll come naturally. But if you're able to, like, enjoy the moment, have the time where you travel, you see the world, you go and you live it up, you spend time with the people you love, you meet new people, you have a great time, you truly extract as much enjoyment, as much fruits as you can from your life, You have that period, and then you can transition pretty seamlessly to the period where you're working. You just need to be very careful because sometimes it can be addicting, right? To just constantly pursue the dopamine, pursue the good, but you need that level of difficulty and working it up, grinding away, slaving away at times. It's a level of difficulty that will help you in the long term. But again, do you want to be that type of person that like you worked your whole life, but you never actually took a step back and enjoyed it? And then you look back and you're like, man, I wish I enjoyed it more. I just was working and now I've woken up. I'm 40 years old and yeah, I have money, but I'm missing so many other great things in my life. Do you want to be like that? I don't think a lot of people want to be like that, but you don't realize it when you're in the moment. You're just grinding away. You're focused just solely on working, on making money, on making a better life so that in the future you can actually live out those fruits. But you're making other sacrifices. You're sacrificing the now for the future. In many cases, the now for the future is a good thing. Like the delayed gratification is a good thing. But when it comes to your life, like just the general impact in your life and the general like days you live, you're sacrificing just a lot of enjoyment. And sometimes there's a threshold between how much you can be willing to sacrifice and how much it actually ends up just hurting you anyway, because you end up looking back and be like, oh, I wish I did more. We as humans are very dumb like that. Like maybe there's a world where you just always are like, oh, I wish I did more, even if you did a lot on the living it up side. And maybe there's the flip side where it's like, oh, I wish I did more work, even if you did a lot on the working it up side. So we can be a little bit stupid sometimes. Our brains, our minds can definitely be our own worst enemies at times. But if you take it from a logical perspective, like if you look back, if you're 40, let's say like you turn 40. I think maybe best case scenario for if you turn 40. You go to college, you live it up, you have fun. In your early to mid 20s, you work some part-time jobs, make some money, and spend that money directly back on traveling, having fun, having a good time. And then by the time you get to like your mid 20s, late 20s, you start to actually make that shift. You start to actually focus on working the job, doing all that stuff, and starting to move forward on other things in your life as well. Then you get to your mid 30s, then you're starting to have a family, you're actually starting to be an adult, right? Actually like more responsibilities continue to pile up. You can be 40 and look back on it, and it's like, I think that's probably the best balance that you want. I don't think there is a live up your 20s or work up your 20s so that your 30s can be either good or bad, right? Like you either live up your 20s and work up your or you live up your 20s so then you're kind of forced to working up your 30s, or you work up your 20s so that you have more leniency to live up your 30s a little bit more. I think it's there's an in between. There's an in between where you can do both so that you can do both. Like you can do a little bit of both in your 20s so that you can do a little bit of both in your 30s, and then you can truly, there's a world where you can continue to build a solid foundation for yourself so that when you're in your elderly years, you'll still have the money, but you can look back and still say that you did a lot of fun stuff, that you made a lot of great memories, that you still lived a fruitful, very great, positive life. I think that is truly the way it works. But I think the last thing I'm going to say before I end off this episode is that you have to be careful, right? Like I look at it from a godly perspective, from a religious, responsible Christian perspective. It's like you can live up your 20s, but you can go too far. And there is a world where you go too far. Sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's just lifestyle. Your lifestyle ends up being so just chaotic that you can never actually be able to make the transition to working it up. So then you end up falling into the trap where you're saying, oh, I'm only going to live it up for a few years and then I'm going to move on. Then you kind of feel attached to your lifestyle and you never want to move on. That's a very big trap, because then you end up falling into those problems that I already mentioned when it comes to living up too much of your life and not spending enough time working. If you live it up too much, you can end up in a state where you end up being 40 years old and you'd be like, okay, well now I'm broke, right? Now I'm paying paycheck to paycheck because I didn't actually think about it enough. I wasn't actually responsible enough to kind of recognize when I needed to stop. So that's a big trap you can fall into. So always, 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 when you're enjoying your life, do it responsibly. Do it with a godly mindset that you're not going to go too far on these very riotous, erratic behaviors that sometimes this party culture, the living it up culture can insinuate. Like, living it up can mean just you travel. Like, you go to different places, couple different trips a year, right? You go to Europe, right? You live it up in Europe, right? You go travel, you see the sights, you spend time with friends, right? You do those things like that, right? You see the seven wonders of the world or whatever it may be, right? That can be living it up without having to go through like the heresy of, like, the party culture that exists, which can definitely break you in a very, very detrimental way. So I warn you about that. If you're going to live it up, find the things that you enjoy doing and do them more often. And it's pretty simple, right? That's a pretty simple concept, right? Go travel, go play sports if you love to play sports. The gym is obviously always there. It's always a good thing if you love to go to the gym, you love to work out. That's always there. You can always be consistent. Go with friends and have great conversations, right? And it doesn't have to be something erotic. It doesn't have to be something crazy, right? You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful when you're living it up. And, on the flip side, you also have to be careful when you're working it up, because you can end up just pushing everyone away from you. And you end up being so focused on your work, on the grind, that it takes you away from actually like the good and the joy, just the pure childlike joy that exists in this world, if you're just so focused on the work. So you need to find the balance. And I think that's a very common theme for a lot of things in this world. You have to find the balance between living it up, enjoying yourself, and being disciplined, delayed gratification, working it up. There is a middle ground. It's going to take some trial and error, I think. It's not going to be perfect, but you don't want to be attached to one philosophy or the other, because there are negatives to each. When you get to your 30s and your 40s, when you're going to reap the rewards, the benefits, or the setbacks of your lifestyle in your 20s. I think there's a world where you have it both ways. And I think sometimes in life, if you want everything, you're going to get nothing. But I think in this case, there's a world where you can balance it out. And you just need to be intentional about it. You just need to be responsible with your partying, with your living it up, whatever that may look like for you. And you have to always be disciplined to continue to do work and continue to grind in that way and move forward in that way in your life. So that's all I got to say for today. Live it up or work it up. I think there is a world where you can do both. And if you can find that balance, I think that is where you're going to be truly living a great life, truly reaping the rewards, having great fruits in your life. Because you're able to enjoy it, you're able to have a great time, you're able to actually experience that joy, and also at the same time be very disciplined when it comes to the work that you put in. So that's where I'm going to end it off. Be very careful when it comes to living it up or working it up. Try and find a balance. Try and find something that can actually make you fulfilled in your life, that can actually help you move forward and live a great life and truly bear the fruits and actually be responsible through it all. And always understand that you don't have to pick one or the other. You don't have to feel pressured or compelled to. Live it. You only live once, truly. And you only are in your 20s one time. And that is when you have the most energy, the most power, really, within you. So use it. Make the most of it. Because eventually you'll get to the point where you're old, and you actually are old, and you actually do feel like whatever arthritis or whatever things happen to people that are old. So you don't want to look back on it with regret. So truly go out there and live it up, right? Live it up and also have the balance. Work it up. You don't want to destroy yourself as well. So be responsible with it. Be intentional with it. And I think, truly, it will all work out. So that's all I got to say for today, for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's a good message. I hope it gets you out of your house a little bit more. It gets you a little bit, makes you a little bit less stressed. You don't always have to be stressed. You can truly enjoy some time in your life. Give yourself the grace to actually enjoy some time. And it will just help you feel better about yourself, experience the joy, feel more fulfilled, while also being able to put the work in that you need to put in to live a good life in the future as well. That's what I got to say for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in any way that you possibly can. I ask for your support. I appreciate you for being here. Like the video, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Spotify if you haven't yet. And any other way you can support this show, I truly would appreciate it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of the 365 Podcast. Thank you for being here. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow for the next one.